All right. How's that? Is that quieter but better?
It's yeah. I think that's as good as it's probably gonna get.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'll just listen to this after the fact and be really embarrassed by it, and then go out and buy a new microphone. So we can just wait until that loop closes. All right. So to kind of keep it light to start, I want to run through the Reddit thread, um, and so I am just gonna sort by most upvotes and kind of work my way down from there. So the top was by Lark, and it was a switch out for the Toon Beast. And I've seen a couple of mentions of this in the chat as well. I mean, I definitely could, but there's part of me that really likes the fact that a mech feels incomplete in a way and kind of needs something else, especially the tuned units, which are already they have so much OP stuff thrown at them already. I really and the beast, it's innate, it's unique to the entire game. It's the only mech that's going to give you more experience. So I kind of like that it's a little broken because I feel as otherwise there's no choice when you're leveling crews. Like you're just going to take a beast out. Um,
Uh, yeah, I think that's fine.
and then the restrictions on low level crews, I did have I made a note to myself. I just to allow the scrapping of low level crews, and that would let you recruit them more. I for a brief moment let people sell low level crews, and then I remembered kind of why I wanted that whole mechanic in the first place. I want those crews to sort of be a resource that's exclusive to you, and you have to invest in them if you want to put them on the market. Otherwise, they just become kind of this resource that you're constantly turning over. You're just market flipping. You're just logging in every day, if you're logging in every day. You're getting your 5 crews. You're putting them on the market. There's nothing meaningful about it anymore.
So I think that's fine. I think the only thing is there's some of us who have like crews that have been sitting there persistently that make management kind of a pain that we would like to get rid of.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I'm gonna enable scrapping for any crew.
What about
That'll definitely do for you.
increasing the maximum of 5 crews a day recruited up to like maybe 20 though? Because I train like 20 crews at a time on Rynn, so I can go through the ones that I get new every day very quickly.
Hmm. Well,
Just to jump in,
oh, go ahead.
sorry, Karen. Sorry, yeah, just it's interesting because I mean, 10 years ago we didn't have ×4, we didn't have hyper leveling, so I think everyone's being spoiled within the last year of how quickly you can do things. So if we're going to adjust to the fact of keeping ×4, beast and having a CE cap that was 1,000 now 5,000 to get optimal EXP, we probably need to reflect the availability of the crews. I don't know if it needs to be 20 a day, but I definitely think it needs to be moved from 5, or at least looked at in a way where we can accrue some way of getting new crews. I mean, I would say there's enough crews in the game. If you could allow the sale of under level 3 crews, or the fact that you can send them between accounts, I think that would fix everything.
Okay. I've always found like the most big like just giving you guys something isn't really a compelling mechanic. I mean, obviously, you'd want it in everything else. What if there was a mechanic where you could find crews as loot, or like maybe you kill a bandit, and when you go to loot it, you find the crew's alive and he's willing to join your group.
I wouldn't mind that. I also posted a thing on the forum before it crashed for Rent supply runs. Depending on how many supplies you picked, one of the refugees at the hatch would like to join your team.
Yeah. Actually, I'm also so I did a stealth buff of supply runs, and I didn't push it out. The rewards are going. I updated the numbers on the deploy screen, but I haven't actually pushed out the backend code because I've got a big rework for bandit spawning in there right now, and it's holding up any update of that side. So uh, I I like that idea because I like the idea of putting the ability to get crews while you're deployed. Um, but I think the reward for completing your resupply mission is going to be so good that that'll be the compelling reason to do that. Like it's 1,000. If you look at the deploy screen, it should be like 1,000 command for completing a high priority supply run.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, I like that. Just a method of getting more crews is like bonus
Yeah,
things for these things. Just an idea there.
Well, yeah, I
and
mean,
like
I think it's nice that it scales with activity, so it should be relatively easy to do, and prevents people from just doing what you said earlier, which is log in, get your 20, and then you're done.
yeah, if I might even like I might even take out the free cruise if the mechanic for getting cruise through salvage is so compelling. Um, or I don't know, maybe lower it a maybe I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll leave it in for now.
The
The
only thing
bandit
I
cruise.
the only thing I would say is, and again, maybe it doesn't matter because as you noted, our last new account was at least a week ago. But if you were a lower level, I think it would be nice still to have it in.
Oh, like our NPE is toast right now. Our new player experience. I've been hacking at it and getting it somewhat workable, but I if we there's a good it's a good thing we haven't attracted any new players in the last I don't know how long, um, because they would
Sure.
be so frustrated with the game.
Yeah.
I also think the game is really built right now for people who've been playing it for years. Um, it it evolved that way because of a lot of the changes that occurred. I think around 2010. I was actually looking at user numbers around just like historically since I started tracking them in the mid 2000s, and we peaked I want to say around 2012, 2010, 2012, somewhere around there. But what you can see first before you see the long-term players die off is the new players just tanked. We just lost the hunt when it came to having something compelling for new people and having an interesting game for new people coming in. And it really became a game for people who had already invested a lot of time and money into the game
But
in the first place.
you know
Agreed.
what's interesting is in the last couple of years, and obviously I don't want to take us too far off the code jam, but I play in a lot of very niche communities. Like they make Warhammer seem gigantic, and there's been a huge resurgence of interest in games like this where the meta and even just the underlying game mechanics are a little bit more complicated. And actually, you can run fairly sustainable and profitable war games, whether digital or in person, with a smaller community base. So I think that there is a balance to be found where we don't have to completely eschew attracting new people to the game while still keeping it the same core concept that everyone who's already been playing, loves and likes.
No, no, no. And so, and DL, I totally hear what you're saying. I think I 8 years has given me a lot of time to reflect on everything I feel like I did wrong, and a lot of all the many things I did wrong, and hopefully a couple of things I did right. And also, kind of when I looked at our user numbers, I compared them up against the updates for that time. Um, and it was actually, I mean, it was great to be able to say like, hey, we lost like all our users around April of like 2011. What happened? And you can see if you go back through the updates from 2009 and run it through about 2013, and the updates stop being content related and they start being more customer service related. They start being more new user drive related, and they start also focusing on like the top tier player, the player that's dropping enormous armies with high powered units, um,
Yeah,
and and yeah, who wants to join a game where you know you're gonna have to you have no chance of competing. Like there's no hook there. You're not going to go and do something fun
yeah,
because all the fun is concentrated at the top 1%.
I think that's maybe where we missed the boat along the way is not resetting certain factors of the game. Like the faction points, if it was maybe done in like a ladder system competition where it reset every 3 to 6 months and you kind of went back to that and the winner the winning faction of either that 30-day, 90 or 100-day cycle got a big prize. That would have taken out the hey, I'm a new player. Oh, I get 7 FP a beacon. This faction's got 700,000. There's no way I'm collecting 100,000 beacons.
yeah. Well, and I think there's a graceful way that we could approach that down the road. But I think like even more important than the FP and stuff is just basic mechanics. And like we were talking about earlier, like maybe there's a way, and I'll post it in the code jam now to like for people who are dropping smaller to give them small little bonuses that might help. And obviously, I don't want to distract from the rest of the suggestions list, so we can discuss this after we get through that. But you know, I think that you're right that there's like a middle ground here where we can come in with hopefully some new things to hook just the occasional people who join in. Like, I think even if we just got 5 new people a quarter, before you know it, like, that's actually contributing to the daily bottom line of active players.
Oh, DL, you just activated my trap card. So this is something that I hit mentally on Monday when I was working on the 2 new features I was talking about, and it really killed all of my desire to continue to work on them. That's kind of why I switched over to Reddit. And I also I did a big revamp of like our site, the front end, tried to modernize it, make it less Tronny, make it actually look fun. I like where it's at.
All right, from the top. How's that?
Good.
Ooh, okay. Really sorry about that. Yeah, of course, when I absolutely need that, it's going to completely fail on me. So, all the getting to the big dramatic thing I'm trying to communicate here. I have 2 new features that I really want to put in DropShock. I think they're going to add some depth, much like what was added to Kanu. And I started kind of flushing them out, working on the code that needed to be shaped up in order to actually support them. That's actually taking a lot of my time, is just taking things I wrote 10 years ago and rewriting them so that they can actually be extended. A lot of what's in there is single use. It's really designed to do one thing, and then sometimes it has a lot of flags around it to let it do multiple things. And it was never an approach written by someone who was thinking years or even months out. It was an approach that was written by someone who wanted to put a feature in as quickly as possible. So that's neither here nor there. When I started thinking about these features and started thinking about balancing them, I immediately ran into looking at how Kanu is working right now, and also how the Shak Hive event went. And basically right now, the most efficient method of getting transmissions on Kanu is to drop 120 of your biggest, best units and then just smash bandits for as long as you can, and loot them. Because even though you're not getting the bonus from the small drop bonus, you're killing so many things, and your army is effectively so impervious because the AI has just too much to shoot at, that you're untouchable. On top of that, in order to balance that, there's the Shakar spawn based on kind of people and drop size. But the problem is, you create situations for other people on the planet when you drop big, because you might cause a Shak spawn that goes after somebody else. So somebody who is trying to play that event kind of the way I hope they would, and is dropping within the C limit, and has some core units, and it's a challenge for them because they might lose one of them. They're receiving the punishment of the guy who is dropping 120 units and is effectively untouchable in the game. That's something kind of that the Hive event that I put together on Sunday. The reason you spawn 50 Shak is because the guy who spawned 120 units has so much stuff that it kicks the scaling totally out of whack. There's no way for the long and the short of this is, there is no way for me to balance a game where I have to consider someone who's dropping with 10 units and consider someone who's dropping with 110 units, and build an encounter that scales for them both when they're both on the same planet. And all right, so I'm going to pause there for a moment and just kind of get some feedback.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead, PK.
I was gonna say, while I agree with the difference in the bonus of being either under 30K or in a smaller army, and then like trying to balance the brutality of having 40 plus units. Because I mean, when I'm doing the signals now, I bring like 20 to 30 army class units, and then my support stuff for salvage, so somewhere around 50 units total, including all the salvagers. I don't think that having the tactic or the method to smash and run through things is a bad thing, because even prior to the signals, it was a similar method for meriting to try to kill as many things as you could as fast as you can. Because if you can proc that low percentile chance of meriting multiple times, you're getting more in the long run. So I think
I think
aggressing and having the tactics to do these things isn't necessarily a bad thing.
okay, but something I'd like to point out is that the reason those chances are so low is because it has to be balanced against the worst case scenario, which is the guy who is dropping with 120 units. So the reason you have such a low chance to proc a merit is because the guy who's dropping 5 times, 3 times as much as you is hitting that chance 3 times as often. So the game is really in order to keep the person with 120 units from running away with the entire game is basically balanced around them. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so I can't speak to any of these new PvE features. It's not a part of the game that interests me. I think 98% of my XP has come from PvP. That's really all I care about. What I can speak to from that element of the game, and we spent a bunch of time talking about it in chat before today, is that from that element, and I understand the importance of these new features and balancing for that, nobody, even those of us who are AO1 like me, really wants to go back to the era of the super commander. But we do think that, say under 30,000 CE, if you could buff the units that are dropping with some minor changes, it could bring a little bit of balance back for the people who are dropping, let's say 1 to 40 units, depending on their loadout, and give them a chance to impact the battle. And I know that that is something, even though it might not go all the way to solving the problems that you laid out, that I think would make a lot of us happy. We did come up with like a full list of changes, demerits under 30K, not necessarily expecting that you would adopt any of them or even one of them, but so much as to maybe get the discussion rolling on what maybe that could look like, because that might be a good first step. Although obviously it seems like fixing the PvE might be a little bit more important at the moment.
Well, it's not even. It all flows together because the the PvP, like the guy who drops for PvP needs somebody else to drop, right? One person can't go down and say I'm going to PvP. They've got nothing to do. Like it's really a group of people, like someone going down to mine, somebody going down to get merits or get signals, and that's their focus. Then the PvP player has something to do. That I don't think that's relevant, but that actually was, what you said triggered exactly.
No. That makes complete sense, and that's why when we were coming up with some of those merit adjustments for under 30K, we tried to focus on buffing both combat and non-combat elements. Hopefully, encourage people across the playing spectrum to drop more and feel more comfortable dropping, even if they didn't have the full 120.
The big issue is, like, as long as someone is able to drop like 120 units, there's nothing I can do on the other side to help things, because the elephant in the room is the guy with 120 Gatlingers. Like the Shak Hive event, there was, I think it was Chubbs. Chubbs basically fended off 150 Shakar, and I think I don't know if he took any losses on top. Maybe he took a couple here and there, but
Which won't be losses for us. You
No,
wrecked my.
I guess the one thing that I would say, and if I'm wrong, I would love to hear this from other people, but it seems to me that the player who can drop 120 unbalances the type of scenario you described quite a bit more than the person dropping 120 in player versus player combat on the other planets. So, on the node planets and things like that, there are plenty of times where the meta doesn't support the 120 because the people you're going up against can effectively target their 50 or 60. There's a natural cap of what you can target, so you're not dealing with the deficiencies of the AI. And I've seen a number of times in the past few weeks where somebody dropped a full army and ended up not even coming close to winning because the people who had 50 or 60 down were significantly better at managing. So I'm not trying to dismiss what you're saying because I think it's 100% correct, but I do think that there are different aspects of the game where the 120 is maybe not as huge of an advantage.
Yeah. Well, I think 120 is way too much. I know I remember when I introduced Supreme Commander the first time and put in army limit, they were much lower out of the box, and there was a huge outcry about it, and they quickly got massively increased. And I think that was kind of the beginning of the end, because when that happened, there was no lever to balance the game against people who just had 5 times the resources you did on a planet. So we've kind of talked around this. This is kind of what I've been thinking in terms of bringing it in. This is a first pass. It's definitely extreme, but I want to go the other way with this because this would allow me to build content, and then we can slowly tune the numbers up if need be. It might be that this is going to be painful, but I think we just have to go forward and try it because I don't see a way forward to produce content for this game when someone can just walk in with a sledgehammer and smash it to pieces and it's no challenge. So, PK, if only. So, max army size for Supreme General will be 32. Max army size for Task Force Commander, 20. Max army size for Army of One, 10. Supreme General is losing all of its special abilities. The auto salvage is going to Task Force Commander. What else is there? The overkill is going to Army of One. It's getting. The drop discount will be upped from 3% to 10%. But the superpower of Supreme General is that you get to bring a bigger army than anybody else.
I think that's incredibly harsh. 20 units for the average planet isn't even salvagers. That's not even bringing support units. I mean, you're looking at less than what is considered squad fighting now.
20 is no bueno.
Yeah, 18 units, 3 squads of 6 is your average squad fight mentality, I'd say now. And then like a DSM, you have to have an MCSU for like ammo refitting, and a couple scouts out ahead. Somewhere around 32 for Task Force Commander, maybe 48 for Supreme General would fit in, and then 24 to 30 for AO1 I think would allow you to still bring the basic necessities to drop down to a planet. Even with like a mining base on Konyu, you're looking at 3 to 5 loggerheads, 4 or 5 mining or salvage units, and then you still need at least 10 to 12 things to fight with.
Okay.
Just to jump in, because I've just been listening a lot in terms of everyone's feedback. I know a lot of your changes, Frizz, have been in a motivation to not undo any work that people have done. And I think for the long-term players that have built up hundreds of different perfect variants and perfect merits and working toward that, I think that could potentially cause an unravelment. And that's not a personal view, just strictly for me. I think a lot of people who have been playing the game for a decade will have a big merit and crew list that will essentially gather dust. So I think more when you said reducing, my initial gut was kind of 60, and then whether that sits as the smallest or the largest, and somewhere around that, because if you sit around the 30 mark, you then always are going to have squad fighting with units that have acties, and it's just going to be Further Lancers, it's going to be Wyverns. You have to have a large amount of numbers to account to whether or not you want to use units with or without acties. So yeah, it's kind of my thoughts initially, but I know this is a new thing, so I'm obviously open to everyone else's thoughts.
Max is fine. I think that's quite manageable. Anything below that is really difficult, especially with some of your new contents. You'd have to scale it back, Frizz, because, like, honestly, you're telling me 20 units, and I'm going to go out there and go take on 60 Shaq? It's not happening.
Yeah, well, no, the reason it's 60 Shack is because of the overdropping. So immediately with this, we could scale everything back because everything is scaled for the person who's dropping 100 plus units.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like below 60 is just, you're going to ruin several aspects of the game that a lot of us hold dear. Like, the only reason I play your game, Frizz, is the army PvP. I'll be honest. I don't give a shit about the politics, the people. I'm just here to kill and army PvP. You're taking that away. There's just no sense to play.
So the thing is, this is the conversation we got into the first time around with army limits, and that was the big outcry: is like, hey, if I don't have this, I'm going to quit. And so, my gut reflex was, okay, 100 plus, go bonkers. The problem was that the only people we have left are the people who enjoyed that kind of gameplay because it sucked the air out of the room for pretty much everybody else.
So Frizz, can I throw out a suggestion? And I'm saying this as someone who's AO1 and has never been good at controlling maybe more than 15 units a turn. I almost wonder if you would be open to considering scaling dropping limits based on planet type. So in general, a big cut down across every planet, but maybe planets that engender themselves specifically to PvP and not necessarily the other mechanics could be slightly a little bit higher. I think that might be a good way to compromise.
Yeah, but see, that's exactly the road we went down when I ripped out all the planets. All those planets had paragraphs and paragraphs of CE limits. So I feel like we've gone down that road. We've tried it, and we're here. I'm hard. 32 isn't a hard and fast. I was just really trying to ratchet this down as hard as possible. So,
well, again, like, I'm the last person who should be arguing against this because, from my standpoint, this is great for my playing style. But I just want to make sure that, like, I understand that you're saying we'll try this and then we'll readjust accordingly based on the results. But I just want to make sure that we're careful and circumspect because if it's perhaps too aggressive in one direction, we may not have a chance to keep around the few people who would be put off by that cut. Because not everyone's super patient.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I'm also, it's difficult for me because I don't have a lot of motivation to develop content when someone is going to like be able to run through it like it's easy mode when it's no challenge.
Sure.
I'm not trying. I'm trying to build something interesting and compelling. I'm not trying to build a sandcastle that somebody just gets to walk in and kicks over. I don't think that's going to be fun for a week or two, and then everyone's going to leave.
Yeah.
So I completely hear whatever. I mean, this is why I wanted to do this in voice, because trying to do this in chat, just everybody gets pissed off. I completely hear what everybody is saying about the limit and about it. Maybe 32 is too much. I'm open to 60 for Supreme General. It could be maybe you start. I'll figure out what it gives you. I'll up the drop discount too, because I'm taking away the other advantages. Supreme General just kind of turned into like, why would you not take Supreme General? You get the auto salvage, you get the other advantage in there. Like, really, the advantage to Supreme General was you get to drop far more than anybody else. That's your superpower.
So in auto salvage would then move to Task Force Commander?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh no, sorry. Auto salvage would move to Army of One, because the idea is in Army of One you're deploying with like your elite units, and these guys have wired up their vehicles to auto salvage. So you're dropping less, but you have a chance of getting something back. That's balancing the low end. I still have. So what I want to do with Task Force Commander, I'll just share it with you guys because I had this kind of idea and I really like it, and I just need the time to put it in the game, is a way of pretty much almost building your own command. So what you'll do is you'll pick a hotkey and then you'll pick a bunch of commands on that hotkey. And when you push that hotkey, all of those commands fire on the unit or the unit stack that you've selected. So they could be offensive commands, defensive commands, but basically you can hotkey fire off commands in battle.
So that would be a huge like plus for me, because one of the big reasons I can't control mini units is I only get about 30-second turns. So having that one advantage would really level the playing field for me.
So Task Force Commander would get like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I agree with that too. The big problem with TFC, even when it first came out, was the amount of click. Like, you know, if I'm throwing down 6 kit foxes with acties, having to command them all, I'm having to do 6 commands, 6 acties, 6 targets. You know, my kit foxes usually ran 3 acties. So just the amount of clicking I'd have to do for such a small amount of units, you know, isn't very feasible with 45-second turns with 32 units even.
That actually, I was gonna ask, would it be difficult to set up mod slots to hotkeys so that you could hotkey actize essentially? So that like if something was in mod slot 1, you press a hotkey and it would activate the acti that's in mod slot 1.
I mean, it's code. Anything's feasible. Is a low lift? Probably not. I like that idea a lot because I think acties. I love when I came up with acties. I loved the idea. I think they were either the first or second expansion, and I thought they were so cool and they added so much depth and difference in the game. And then nobody used them because it was so difficult to use them meaningfully. It's hard enough to use commands. It was a whole other thing to like get into a unit, get into its info page. Okay, now is the acti on cooldown? Is it ready? How many try to find it? No. I completely agree. We need a better way to use them because they should have been awesome and they never were.
So one thought I have for Task Force Commander would be kind of maneuvers. So like their set command and acti things that you have preset that's like your maneuver. You command a unit to do a maneuver, which is a combination of acti and command.
Yeah. So if I can get.
Can I ask a clarification on that? So let's say I have an X-bar acti. I could have it overcharge and get the 150%, attack someone and hit them with this command by pressing one button and hitting that unit. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I'm suggesting like you click the unit and activate, say, maneuver number 1, and that's already a preset.
And you would get
number 1, and like you know, based on the balance, maneuvers could be a set to like 3 different actions, or like could be stacks. So like a stack of 6 could be, hey, this stack of 6 can be mass maneuvered, depending on the specific balance of it.
You know what could be done pretty quickly, actually, is if you had hotkeys that were blind, but they basically said, activate the first acti on this unit, activate the second acti on this unit, activate the third acti on this unit. As long as you didn't change the What's that?
You cut out just in the start of the explanation there.
Okay. Just hotkey. I thought of a way to kind of do it pretty quickly. It's not going to be. It's going to be. It might be a little bit. I don't know. We'll have to see how it works. But anyway, let's get back to army sizes. That's really that's kind of the meat of this discussion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's like a middle ground if you had the acties mapped sequentially, like saying, depending on what you have. Let's just say you don't have any other hotkeys, so we start at 1. Acti 1 corresponds to 1. Acti 2 corresponds to 2. That's a good hacky way to get it into the game to start with while you build something a little bit more complex.
Just to jump in, Frizz, will you plan on an entire rebalance of everything across the board? Because if we're going to look to have a limit of 32 units and hotkey acties, the 12 units that have acties are going to then be the only things that are dropped, because 24 double integrated simple Further Lances will walk rings around 32 gats just by pure build. So is your plan to rebalance that, or is this whole conversation, I missed a bit because I had to jump in and out, but is this specifically for one planet? Is the mass PvP with the 100 building limit going to still have the 120 or no drop limit, or is this going to be hit across the whole solar system?
Yeah, the intent of this, in my mind, is to really fix a core problem that was introduced to the game and that was never addressed. And there were so many design decisions and balancing that were spawned out of that. It's going to take a lot to unravel that. But the first step is to kind of fix the ability to mass drop on any planet, and then see where that goes. I think the best balancing happens if I change 30 things at once. Who knows? Like where it's going to be really.
You can't isolate which variable led to the success or failure.
What's that?
Well, I was saying that if you change a bunch of things at once, it's not a very scientific approach, right? Because you can't necessarily isolate which variable led to that outcome. You can make guesses, but you really don't know until you change, one or two things at a time, and then really look at it at a deep level.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of like the idea of giving everything superpowers or taking all the superpowers away and seeing who does what with what, and then that's the broken things.
So I was thinking 30, 60 was thrown around. Maybe 50 for Supreme Commander, and then how an army of one feels like 2025, and that would put Task Force Commander somewhere around like 35 or so. Maybe we split the difference between.
That's
50.
better.
If we're to make this change now, I think we'd need to instantly look at what chain reaction that causes across all planets. So with the current player base, and the most active faction will have 4 to 6 droppers in any one. No, that's an exaggeration. Maybe 2 to 3 droppers at one time zone. If you've put 100 building limit on Dominus and you want the highest to be 50, one person defending with 100 buildings is going to walk through 3 people. I think there might be your most recent changes are going to be contradicted with this change.
Yeah, that was just kind of.
Yeah, Slayer's right.
So Kanu is probably the most developed planet right now. I've been using Hades and Dominus as more kind of testing grounds for. So I talked about last week kind of the different player profiles. And Kanu is really built for that. My intent for Kanu is kind of the mid-level dropper, someone who is in that 30,000 CE sweet spot and is working with a couple of units that they really like, but like army fighting is reserved more for Dominus and Hades. So the 100 building limit was just because I really like that node capture idea and building up a base. So I think that's more experimenting, less like, okay, this is a mechanic that I'm really set on. So yeah, the kind of like, go ahead.
I kind of.
Oh, sorry.
My bad. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask 2 things. So first of all, I think that trying to anticipate every potential issue that could be introduced with this would just lead to analysis paralysis, and I don't think we would actually move forward. I think it's okay if we have a week or 2 where we're uncomfortable with things, because that's when we'll get the data about what actually needs to be changed, rather than us like prognosticating and hope that we've isolated the right things. The only other thing I was going to look at was, Slayer did bring up a point about, Fertile Lances will be way too powerful. But one thing is about a Fertile Lance build is that if you use the mods that are really good for the CE count, it's actually quite higher than you would perhaps expect. So maybe one thing worth investigating is, rather than having a hard unit cap, look at having a CE cap that roughly corresponds. And that way, if people are using specific mod combinations on intermediate or advanced, it accounts for that.
I've said 2 negative things about your feedback, Frizz. So I just wanted to say that I think that what you've said is a really great idea. I just don't believe it should be solar system wide. If you were to say, insert a planet, if you want to play with Konu, Hades, Dominus, whatever you want to do, and you said that this specific thing you're throwing around now is to go onto that planet and only that planet, I would be so game for that. Personally, obviously, again, that's my personal opinion. I'm not sure what everyone else would echo. But my thought is, as Les said, if you do just drop this in and go, let's see what happens, I think there'll be an initial shock of people not playing. And I think that if there's initial feedback just by Trapt saying, I would genuinely not log on, then we need, with the player base that we have, and it's so niche and so loyal, we need to really, the reason we're here is to go, here's an idea, what do we think? I think if we did this for one planet, that could give us the data to suggest if this could be rolled out solar system wide.
Yeah. The problem.
60 minutes max.
Go ahead, Cap.
Dom, Hades, put it on the fact war planets. Keep Konu maybe 30 unit max. That's okay. That's acceptable. But just like,
I want the planets to be. The thing is, we went down this road. We went down this road of trying to shoehorn people into planets by putting CE limits in and drop limits in and scaling limits in, and it doesn't work. It's not. It's a band-aid on a arterial bleed. Like underlying, there's no mechanic problem there, and I don't think trying to put bumpers on everything solves that.
Well, and one thing I have is, if it's not okay for the game to be kind of shitty for some people for like a week, and they're willing to quit over it being this way for about a week, we can't be making game changes
I'm willing to quit
all that
over this being permanent. I don't give a shit about what happens in the next week. If this gets changed in a couple days, it's okay. But I'm not gonna.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It needs to be a work in progress. Us changing it to this, and us saying people aren't going to log on for a week if this gets changed, isn't a reason not to me to not change it.
So let me
we need to work this out.
Trapt really has kind of the view that led for this line of thinking to get killed in like 2010 when these features came out. So let's drive into this. What I'm trying to accomplish with this change is, so I think Konu's in a good place, like especially with these limits. Suddenly now, like the Shak can be balanced. The rewards are going to make more sense, because now I think that will really allow the people who drop with that 330,000 CE or less, that bonus is going to make sense versus dropping the most, because you aren't going to be able to kill as much. You won't have as many things to kill. So let's put Konu aside. Dominus and Hades, my goal for that is to make that one planet that has a bunch of really cool large army features that take kind of collaboration, but it's still like watching like hundreds of units just tear through pretty much like the most I could, aside from crashing the server. I don't really know how I can like threaten an army of that size. It's just too, and the only thing I can really do is throw like another 100 Shak at you until like I overwhelm you, and then that's no fun for you because you just lost 120 Gatlingers. So that's why I'm trying to like pull this in, because if the numbers are a little smaller, the tuning on the enemies can be a little cleaner, and then that challenge level we can find where it is strategic, and you do have to make smart decisions against NPCs as opposed to just it being a numbers game.
No, I totally get that. The only thing I was asking was, there was a point brought up about simple and intermediate units that punch above their weight relative to their, place in the simple, intermediate, advanced. And that's why I was saying maybe the system-wide limit should perhaps look at CE rather than just unit count, because that might partially address that concern.
I think that instead of army limits, I like that idea a lot, actually. After I heard you say that, because just kind of waiting to chime in. If we instead looked at like what the average 60 army unit CE is, or maybe even the average 48 unit army CE is, and then incorporated that as being the supreme general, and then scale that down as well. Then instead of saying, hey, you're only going to be able to use this many units, you're instead looking at, well, okay, you have 300,000 CE to work with, or you have 500,000 CE to work with. Do you want to use a bunch of simple and intermediate units and maybe control 100 or 200 even, or do you want to use 30 to 50 advanced units only?
That's actually kind of brilliant, and that plays right into like a Warhammer battle point strategy.
Exactly, because what I was trying to get at is like one of the major skills in other games like this is looking at economy and figuring out with that budget that you have to deploy how you can manipulate it. But with it being per unit, right now we don't really have to make that kind of conscientious decision, especially with how cheap quote unquote command is for most of the players in the game at the moment.
Unfortunately, guys, I've got to go. But just one quick closing thought, just after listening to that, I think, Frizz, I know you said something about you hate Rynn's. Not hate's a strong word, but you said you really disliked Rynn's hard CE limit. I personally love it because I think it creates a different balance. One thing that Dog said in the chat, which I think is quite important, over the course of the game, the reason why numbers won is because the biggest pile of resources in the last 10 years of the game were fought on faction war planets, and it was numbers, you just throw mud on the wall and some of it will stick. That method of success of overwhelming the opponent has just been copied and pasted over to Konu, where we're at endgame, where everyone has hundreds of thousands of command and they can just drop 120 for the sake of winning. They may have lost more units, given away more EXP, but they overwhelmed them, so it's fine. I think if we look at the commander trees, and my question to you is, your ideal best case to allow every commander tree to be on every planet, because AO1 has its place in large wars, but it can't fight an SG, whereas Task Force can outperform AO1, but it might be in a different planet in a different environment. So maybe we might need to look at potentially one player can't be on every planet, but they have to pick their part of the solar system and then make respecking a little bit easier, where they can kind of change their strategy while they're undeployed, which will then dictate the need for that person. Does that make sense? Sorry, I know it's a bit long-winded.
No, that does make sense. But at the same time, I find the most compelling gameplay is one where choices matter. So you have a strategy that you really like and that you really feel personifies you in the game, and then you see how that strategy matches up against other people. And you know that some fights you're going to be a little bit of the underdog, and some fights you're going to be slightly advantaged, but you should never feel like you have no chance in a fight. And I feel like that's where we're at right now with 120 units on the field.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, I don't know, I think if you create a hard unit limit, then you create
I've been talked out of the unit limit. What I was saying about like the CE limits for planets. No, I actually really like Rynn too. I think it's the planet that actually I got right just by accident, but it's that like small drop planet. I really don't want to do much with Rynn because I feel like it's in such a good place. I want to up the rewards a little bit on.
Yeah, Rynn I feel is the closest to.
Thanks for the fun, guys. I'll see you all later.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got to go. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So, Frizz, what I was saying was that I think Rynn is actually the closest we have to a perfectly balanced planet right now.
Yeah, no, that's why I aside from like I've got a little buff going in for the command for the rewards on it, I'm staying away from Rynn because for whatever reason I lucked into getting that one in pretty good shape. Probably listening to you. So let's talk. So I'm sold on these CE limits. Why don't we focus the discussion and talk about kind of what makes sense? So I sketched out a first pass of CE units. It would be Army of One with a hard CE limit of 30,000, Task Force Commander 60,000, and Supreme Commander 100,000.
That maps pretty close to what we were talking about earlier, at least for the AO1. I mean, I would feel pretty comfortable with that personally.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, in my opinion.
Trapt, how do you feel about it?
Well, let's see how it works.
I like this because it also solves the problem of support units. Like, one LE isn't going to take up, the space of a GAT.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think this unit limit has really killed the diversity in armies. because you have to compare everything now. When it's a unit limit, you're comparing everything against the best in slot. There's no strategy. Like you're just loading up as many best in slots, and then you're like, well, then you're minimizing your support.
Agreed.
Exactly.
This makes things CE limit per thing instead of army limit. It opens up like it's a huge range of diversity in what you're going to drop and what you're going to see on the battlefield now.
And then we've got a lot more room to tune the CE as well, versus tuning army numbers, which is just kind of, you don't know what one extra unit means to somebody because you don't know how they're going to use that.
Well, like
can I just say,
modification mods and the war hero and clones, this brings like a whole new value to all of that as well. Like Mark of the Commander is going to be one of the best in slot mods now.
Go ahead, Gear. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, as someone that owns a lot of crews, I mean, it just allows you to have a backstore of units that you can redrop if necessary. I mean, for someone that has a lot of storage, I would be happy with this update.
Okay, no, I'm excited about this.
I was just going to say I have just removed all my war hero merits though, but thanks to that.
I saw that. That's. Does anybody else have feedback? So it sounds like there's a lot of alignment on CE limits. Are we okay with the high end Supreme General 100,000? Nice, solid big number for Supreme General, and you're getting drop discounts. That your superpower is that you're bringing units. Task Force Commander is getting the overkill immunity that was on Supreme General, and their CE limit is 60,000. Army of One is getting the Auto Savage that was on Supreme General, and their CE limit is going to be 30,000.
So I really like this, and I think that I would be hesitant to try to add too much more until we get this in and see how it works. But I think this is a good starting point.
We need to update. So I'm going to update the UIs in your army. You're going to, in your view army screen, you're going to see what your limit is, and then same thing with the deploy screen. It's just going to tell you like, hey, you're over your army limit. I guess new player limits. I don't know. Maybe I'll put it around 40,000 or so, because the idea is when you choose Army of One, you actually kind of scale back what you usually can drop. But we're so far out for worrying about new players right now. I'll just throw something in and we can come back at it later.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
And I'll be throwing everybody a commander respec along with this.
First quick question. The overkill thing, that's the salvage chance, right? Or is that something different? Like, I'm not sure I follow the overkill thing you're talking about.
So there's some code that if your unit is overkilled, there's a higher chance that your crew dies.
Oh, I actually didn't know that. Okay. Learn something new every day.
Yeah, it's a minor thing. It'll probably go away when I build out the feature that I really want for Task Force Commander, but this at least gives them something because it's going to take a bit because I've got to do a whole front end piece to get this make your build, kind of this build your own command functionality in place, and I don't have that set up on my dev environment yet. Okay, I think this. So I came in thinking one thing. You guys sold me on CE, and once I saw it, it makes a lot of sense. That'll be the next thing I do. I'll get started on that right away. Actually,
well, I think we all appreciate you being willing to discuss it, because I know it sounds like we're all disagreeing, but I think from seeing the discussion beforehand and the discussion here, I think most of us are on the same page. I think we just have different ideas how to get there, and I think this is a good middle ground to start.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Frizz.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see here. Let me see if there's anything else on Reddit that really jumped out. Yeah, the rest were there was one person that posted like 30 things. Oh, it's Slayer. That's going to be a little. I don't know, and some of it is stuff we've already talked about in balancing. Yeah, I really want. I feel I really want to solve kind of this large army issue and find that spot where the people who enjoy, as Trapt said, army level fights are still getting that, but but I still have the breathing room to develop content that's challenging for them and for all of you as well at the same time.
I
And
think the
so,
flat
go ahead.
CE limits also kind of helps you on that aspect too, because that's like it's very easy to work on with code. We just okay, there's 100,000 variable here. That's a static thing to work with.
I'm actually thinking about how I'm going to revamp the bandit spawn code. The current stuff is basically there's just some there's this big array that lives out there that's different bandit combinations that I built, and it just goes out and kind of glues together a bunch of pre-rolled bandits. The new code would actually look at your CE and then build a bandit for you using all the possible bandits in the all the possible units in the game, and then kind of throw this little bandit army at you. Maybe throw in some buildings as well, like build a little bandit base as well. And if you defeated it, then the game would note that, and then behind the hood, just basically say, okay, next time you fight, you're going to fight as if you had 5,000 more CE. So every time you defeat bandits, you are going to be facing slightly more difficult bandits the next time you reveal them.
For every bandit base you kill, there's another death hog that gets added to the batch next time.
Would that work? Would that? I was just going to say, would that work in reverse as well when losing?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, actually, that's brilliant. So the code could also, like, if you take a commander death, then to a bandit, then the game next time you spawn a bandit, it would kind of say, okay, you get a slightly easier bandit because you got knocked out last time you played. I like that. And Army C already scales. So if you're fighting and say you lose one of your big units, the game would throw you less difficult bandits automatically if this code was in place, because it auto scales your CE while you're on a planet already. That was built in so that experience scaled properly.
Well, that's a nice side effect.
All right.
I was looking at.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I was looking at the buildings yesterday because I was talking to Dragoon and a couple other people about the bandit base, like pinata and having better rewards and stuff, and we talked about making them all advanced last week. There's not actually a lot of advanced standard buildings. Most of the advanced stuff is Shakar or like fusion reactors. Even like large refineries are intermediate. So I think we need to rework the bandit bases, but the all advanced idea kind of went out the window when I actually went and looked at the database yesterday. So I don't know how to rework them exactly, but we definitely need better bandit bases.
Okay. What I might do is take it's the intermediate, the ones like the the ballistic. Hang on, let me pull a library.
If you sort by advanced, it's pretty much like the supply depot, the EMP generator. It's mostly support buildings that are in the advanced tab. And then like all the Shakar buildings are advanced and one or two other things. But almost everything in buildings is actually an intermediate or Shakar.
Oh yeah, I guess they get capped at intermediate, but kind of that first group of the core buildings. Let me sort of. Yeah, so my vision is like the heavy turrets that are in the core set at the intermediate level. Um, I can take a pass at those. I'll reuse the art. Maybe I'll flip them around that way you can kind of tell them apart, but that'd be kind of cheesy. I don't know, but and then just make advanced versions of those that only bandits have access to. But then you can loot them.
I like that. I can work up the models a little bit if you'd like something that's not necessarily standard and looks a little bit more advanced. I'll just kind of use what's there and do some copy and paste working, and some little modding there.
Yeah, cool. Just one thing to keep in mind for the art: you need 4 versions of it. 3 3D versions. Buildings are pretty easy because the units have 2 facing. So, but yeah, if you work off of the 125 size PNG for the building and then make an icon, it's pretty easy to scale that to 40 and 30.
Sounds good. I can do that. Shouldn't be an issue.
Well, this is the bandit rework is part of the spawn rework, which is still it is further out. The first thing I want to do is get these CE limits in place and then finish up the 2 pieces of new content that I've wanted for Hades and Dominus, and figure out how I'm going to squish those planets together to make a Kanu style planet that's for larger armies. And maybe the solution to players like Trapt is that one of those planets just becomes a mass drop planet with where your CE limit is doubled or something like that. Like it is, and there's no NPCs. We'd have to figure out some compelling reason to fight, but it could just be like, this is a planet you go when you want to drop absolutely ridiculous amounts of stuff, but that can be down the road. Because that planet appeals only to one type of player. I really want to, like, Kanu appeals to at least like 3-4 different types of player styles, and I want to build those up first before we get into the really specialized planets. Okay, I think we're kind of winding down here. Does anyone have anything they want to say as we're finishing up?
I'm good.
Might as well. Well, we have the time. What is everyone's thoughts on like the process of building? Because I personally find it very laborious.
It's pretty simple.
Like I have limited time to play, so like
One
spending
click
like
building.
40 minutes to like click
I think
through
it's been
like
brought up at every
10
AMA.
different-
I want to balance that because I want part of the appeal of the game to be the risk of loss, right? You're going out with this army, and you could actually lose this army, and somebody else could take it from you. And I worry that if it's so easy to create units, the weight of dropping down with all of these advanced elite units that you had to spend a lot of time parting together goes out the window. And now it's just the weight of dropping a simple is the equivalent of weight of dropping the biggest, most complex unit in the game. I understand it from an ease of use perspective, but from a gameplay mechanic perspective, what I feel like what really communicates the importance of a unit begins with its
Just to
construction.
add to that, I mean, if you make it so it's easier to build, you are then just adding in the resource, can just trade the resource straight in it.
Sorry, you cut out on the second part of that.
Have you ever tried to build a wyvern?
Yeah, wyverns and dragoons are kind of nightmares to build. I mean, even just clicking as fast as you absolutely can, you're looking at a couple of minutes a unit typically. Like if you're to actually go from A to B to build like your whole mod slots or your whole build slots worth.
Yeah, I think I got a little carried away with those two, especially dragoons. I feel like they don't really get fielded because it's such a pain in the butt to build. But I don't know. It's part of the. But I see people running around with armies of wyverns, so someone's going.
Dog
It's
is
all trapped.
I think dog likes dragoons.
I've never really saw the need for dragoons personally, but
Well,
I use mostly missiles, so 2 hit bonuses don't really affect me that much because I'm already hitting with Withering Fire with missiles and 20 units. But like, I guess from like a squad point of view, they're probably decent. I just personally haven't done much.
I I disagree that if there was one click building, it takes away from the amount of loss. I think one click building would actually drive the economy more because then you're just kind of building everything you need and going and using it right away. So you're losing things faster and spending less time looking at a army screen or the construction tab, and you're spending more time looking at your planet deployment. So I think
Yeah.
that's actually I think it'd be better if we spent had less time to spend building. At least one click mods and then units you actually maybe increase the wait time a little bit on, but
Yeah,
having to
like
go
No,
through
I
the
the
like
whole
idea
that.
of
building
like
three mods is
one-click
horrible.
mods.
What if
Because
all mods are one click?
yeah, I like the sound of that because then I'm
Yeah.
not having to make 60 clicks just to build one wyvern, or however
Or,
many it
or
is.
a lot more actually.
Yeah, it's actually a lot more than 60, but yeah.
Exactly. I have no idea because I just don't do it.
Don't do it. You don't have to do
I
it.
support one-click mods.
Okay, I think that's a good middle ground because it's still you
Well,
there's a little bit
well,
of clicking there for the larger ones, but the tediousness of going all the way down to the simplest construct and then working your way all the way forward can be removed.
and also like if more complex mods can just take longer to build.
Yeah, we reduced it down to 1 second build time. If like we did simples are 1 second, intermediates are two, advanced are three, and then units are four or five. I think that'd be another maybe good middle ground to there still being some construction time, but you're not waiting to kind of go through the whole tier list to get through things.
Okay, I'm not super concerned about the time. I definitely hear. I mean, I definitely hear the comment that like I don't play this game to click on the construction screen. I play this game to like drop armies and build stuff. So yeah, maybe it's time to just put in one click mods, leave the build time low, and let people get to planets faster.
I think so.
You know, just a,
I think it helps.
Okay, it's definitely. I mean, it's on the stack of things. It's higher up on the stack, and I think now that we've kind of talked around it, because it addresses some concerns I had around one click building because I think I felt like it completely removed the flavor of building. But I think if you're one clicking the mods and then putting the unit together, you get that flavor of building, but you're removing the 5 to 10 minutes for the really complicated ones.
Plus one on that.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's quite a few things, and I'll just have to build out. I got my old laptop working from. Actually, do I have the code? I brought over. Let me see if I have the code for when I did the one-click implementation. If I can find that code, all I would have to do is the UI. Is hook the UI up to it and hook that up to the database. But if I don't have the code, I'm gonna have to rework all of the computing of costs and checking of construction, everything.
Frizz. Dog asked if there was anything planned for Shak Mods because there's a lot more floating around.
Which the ones that are embedded on the units?
No.
I would assume that that's referring to the free one.
Maybe making them less unique or giving them some other purpose, like they could be, you trade one of each in for something else, or just some other purpose to them, since there's starting to be an overwhelming abundance of them in the game.
And they're just not they're not really good enough to put on units.
I mean, you can only.
Well, it's because they're unique. I believe it's the uniqueness.
If they were non-unique and maybe just toned down a tiny little bit, that would make them not broken and give them an overall purpose.
Yeah, that was kind of the easy way out on those. Is what was make them broken, but make them unique. Um, yeah, and especially with the changes I want to do with the shack, there's going to be a lot more of them dying, and it kind of sucks that the first time you get one of them, it's like, okay, I never want to see this again because it's unique and I can only use one.
Yeah, I think.
What if instead of
maybe a 20% reduction in their overall OP-ness would make them kind of balance them out, like cannon or obliteration cannons, or some of the other like really good mods, but you can use as many as you want in an army. Maybe give them one CE factor and make them a really high CE factor since we're changing that over as well, and that would limit how many of those you want to have in an army.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, instead of nerfing them or changing the stats, what if we just had a max of like 5 or 10 per deploy instead of taking it and making it less of what makes it unique and getting rid of that part of it. We just add a max of like 5, 10, or some number that we can come up with instead.
I like
Well,
that
I mean,
because
it goes from
I feel like
unique.
making them not taking away their uniqueness will really affect AO1 players. That's a big bonus to them being able to use that.
Yeah. On top of that, coming from like an army perspective or a large squad perspective, giving me the ability to have 10 Dark Vengeances, your gats are gone. You have no shields now. So in my opinion, they would need to be nerfed a little bit more than 20% to make them non-unique. Wraith Hunters would just shred your entire armor just over time, but still, it's
Well,
It sounds like
I see with Shak Mods, especially since we're now implementing CE limits. That's going to be a big thing if we can use them in mass. I don't know if there's a way for Dark Vengeance specifically, if we can make that 8 EMP go just to the unit it hits. That would balance it out a little more too.
Could I just make a proposal quickly? So for Army of One, why could Army of One have the ability to use unique mods multiple times?
That actually is a pretty good idea. I like it.
If your army of one, you get to use 3 of a unique item instead of just 1 of it.
I
I mean, yeah, I don't use Army of One, but
I'd use Army of One if there was a use to do it. That's just my
I
personal feel.
actually have an idea that would kind of play along with that as far as the unique mods and especially the Shak mods. So instead of, making them completely unique, why not make them like command mecha? They can only be equipped to one of the command mechas. You could use more than one, but how rare is a battlefield promotion?
Good.
I mean, they're not that rare anymore.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea that the Shak mods are like they're super advanced, so you could only use say an elite unit or a commander unit or something like that. That would maybe make them less unique overall, but still not so overpowerful. And I also like Trapt's idea if we do something like that to where it only affects the units being hit and not the whole stack.
That was my idea. I think someone else said that. I just agreed with it.
But whoever said it could plus one them to both of you then.
By limiting it to battlefield promotion, I mean, I know it makes it, they're pretty prevalent, but at the same time, how many people here have 120?
Battlefield promotion crews? Probably none of us. That's a lot of them.
Space Coast does.
That's true, though.
Space Coast has
He has everything, so we could
he has
ignore
a
that.
full army worth of every possible combination.
It's ridiculous, that old man.
It's okay though. We're not designing the game to play against SC. We'd all lose.
Yeah, he's the king of cheese.
All right. I'm gonna drop and work up the CE changes for the 3 commander tiers. It seems like it should be something pretty quick, so keep an eye out for it. Unless I throw a special character in there somewhere, and then it's gonna take me the rest of the night.
Appreciate it. Good session. Appreciate you coming in and sharing some new ideas with us.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. Great feedback. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Feel it.
Before we hang it up and I stop the recording, anybody else got anything else they'd like to share or kind of go over and talk about?
Slayer sucks.
Plus one on that. All right. Well, with that long, awkward silence, we're going to wrap it up. This is the May 16th, 2020 AMA session with Frizz, Code Jam.